Now that we have our general introduction to scaffolding, let's take a look at the meat of it and get into the academic research on the subject. So you may be familiar with Bloom's taxonomy already or Pimsleur's research, but let's take a look at them one by one, starting with Bloom's taxonomy. So in a nutshell, if you are not familiar with it, it is a logistical hierarchy with levels of learning that build on each other. So that's nice and abstract. Let's break it down into what that actually means. So we have over here our wonderful little cake graphic. So it is important to think about Bloom's taxonomy as a cake. You often see it as a pyramid as well. Both of these work. I personally like the cake because it really suggests that you are building on top of each other. You need the bottom to support everything that goes on top. So at the bottom, we have remembering as our #1 important skill for students. So this means recognizing and recalling facts. Very basic. This is ultimately what all of our knowledge is based on, is if you don't remember the facts, you're not going to be able to do much of anything else. After you remember, then comes the understanding. So understanding what those facts mean. You might be able to perfectly recall information, and this is an area that is being researched at this time in terms of memory recall versus actual comprehension of material when students are cramming versus actually paying attention to the materials. So this is a very, very crucial step in terms of actually keeping that information in your brain and understanding its relation to everything else. And then after understanding is applying. So that means taking the rules, the facts and concepts and applying them to external situations. Then after that, you're able to analyze. And that's breaking down the information into component parts. So I'll go into more examples about what this means in the next section, actually, on asking questions well, to exemplify this in action, but understanding how all the parts work and what parts they are in fact. So imagine taking apart a puzzle and you are looking at all the individual pieces and you are analyzing how they fit together. Then with the evaluation stage, you are judging the value of the information or ideas. So this part is when you're able to assess for yourself whether or not this information is relevant, what it means, and especially the context that it lives in. How do these puzzle pieces work together? Are they important? And where does each one fit in the grand scheme of the overall picture that you're trying to put together? And finally, we get to the creation stage. So as you would probably intuitively guess, that is combining parts to make a new whole. So it's very important that we do follow this taxonomy. And I think often as teachers, we expect to sort of jump from the remembering to the creation stage. I know that I'm guilty of this at times. I think that just because the student has repeated the facts for me, that they're suddenly on the level that they're able to create something, make their own sentences, construct their own paragraphs. It's not necessarily the case, and that's why we need to follow the structure and keep in mind that these students need time to process everything, and imagine this as that processing process. So it is very important to keep this in mind, and we're also going to be looking at this later on in our course in the next section. So please do remember this, and you can always rewatch this video if you need to refresh your memory on the subject later on.